Hello and welcome to the Excalibur podcast, hosted by me, Kyle Brooks. Today we have an esteemed guest, Beth Lennon. She is a functional nutritionist, national board certified health and wellness coach, and water release therapy provider who is passionate about helping people take charge of their health journey with a master's in nutrition that comes from the National University of Natural Medicine and a bachelor's in communication from the Northwestern University. She brings over 2 decades of hands-on experience in health and wellness. And over the past 9 years, she's had the privilege of coaching individuals and groups, teaching them functional nutrition classes and developing a wellness program that makes a real difference in people's life. Welcome, Beth. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with us.
Thanks, Kyle. It's great to be here today.
Perfect, perfect. It's really good to be able to talk to you because at the end of the day, we started to synergize between our two brands, and we are going to be incorporating some of your work into our actual application and part of our program, allowing our clients to be able to converse with you and really, really shape up their nutrition. Because if you put garbage into your body, you're going to get garbage out. Whereas you can refine that process and really help them to get the best results moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited for what we can offer your clients kind of on a broader scale, being able to put like short videos and education and the ability to communicate with me through your app. So I'm super excited for that.
Awesome. Before we continue, I think that we have to provide the clients with a disclaimer or the viewers with a disclaimer, just in case that there's a little feedback or something along the lines that we want to make sure that they are 100% knowing that this is not recommended per se, but this is how we kind of move on forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So just letting people know this is all for informational and educational purposes. So I do hold a Master of Science in Nutrition. I'm a nationally board certified health coach, but I'm not a medical doctor. And the information that I do share is intended for education and informational purposes only. So please be aware that I am not your doctor, nutritionist, or health coach unless we've established a formal working relationship. This should not be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any new questions you have regarding medical conditions and before starting any new diet, supplement, or exercise program. So, those are
Perfect.
just the legal details, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to get into the conversation with you.
Awesome. Now that the legal's out the way, let's
Yeah,
dive right
let's
into
have
it.
some fun.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So my first question or my first point of view that I'd like to get is, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to becoming a nutritionist?
Yeah, I love that question. It's always a fun one to kind of hear the path people take to get into different areas of their lives. So I always had an interest in health and wellness, really. But in undergrad, I took a lot of detours, maybe at a young age, a little bit too much socializing and partying, and not enough focusing on my studies. But I went into the field of communications, and I ended up in health and wellness communications,
Okay.
just partly because it's such an area that most companies hire people to write their benefits materials and their health
Hmm.
and wellness materials. So I got
Okay.
into that and was doing that for probably about 7 to 10 years before I was really at like a breaking point. I was working on a consulting job in Chicago. It was a great job, but it was a lot of stress,
Uh-huh.
and I was working mostly with like HR professionals and benefits departments.
Okay.
And I didn't have a chance, I didn't feel like, to impact directly the lives of people. You could argue that you were impacting more lives by being behind the scenes, but I
Yeah.
really liked that front line, working with clients and actually helping them improve their health and also like seeing the outcomes.
Yes.
And so I was kind of acting as this like writer and project manager behind the scenes. And I had a little bit of a breakdown, we'll say, and I kind of left and took a year off and traveled around the world and was like, what do I want to do? And when I came back, I was like, I have this experience, but I always was interested in nutrition. Um, One of the challenges is didn't agree with what is the sort of FDA prescribed food pyramid
Hmm.
and the government standards around what is um, required or recommended by the
Yes.
government. And so I was like, how do I don't want to be a dietitian because that requires that I recommend these particular things to people.
Hmm.
And so this was in, I think like 2012, 2013. I came back and I was like, there is this growing area of holistic nutrition. And that was how I found NUNM, which is where I went for my master's program. And they are the oldest naturopathic medical school in the
Oh,
US,
wow.
actually,
Okay.
in Portland, Oregon. And they had just started like a year before a nutrition program. And it was
Hmm.
fully based in holistic nutrition and was not a path to becoming a dietitian, but more on the path of a nutritionist. And so I did a bunch of research on those programs, and I was like, you know what, this seems more in line with my fundamentals and my values. So
Yeah.
that was how I sort of took that path, and that was about 9 years ago that I graduated from that program. So
That's awesome. So I
yeah.
I took two things from that state or from that conversation with the lead in there is one is that you wanted to be have a hands-on experience with your clients and to be able to see the results that they're experiencing. And that's one of the most rewarding things about being a coach is to see that client go from one stage to the next stage and then the next stage. And it's not you doing the work, but it's you giving them the tools and empowering them because then they come into their own. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is the whole, piece of really it's interesting because people come to me and they're like, "What should I do?" And yes, I have a lot of educational resources and information, but ultimately it's up to the person and like what is going to be sustainable, what
Hmm.
will you do, what appeals to you, what fits your lifestyle and your budget and
Exactly.
all those things, your busy life. So yeah, I totally agree. And that is the most fun. I mean, I
Yeah.
love nothing more than like teaching classes, doing groups, doing one on one coaching sessions, and interacting with the people whose lives are impacted on a day to day basis by learning.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's 100% in line with what we do at Excalibur. Our goal or our purpose in life is to be able to impact 100,000 men's lives through the four pillars that make up their lives, which is mainly physical, mental, social, and financial. The first two we have very good expertise in, and now we're getting more and more expertise, bringing on people like yourself and different other coaches to integrate into this. And eventually, we're going to become the number one personal development company in the world. That's the vision that we have.
Wow, I love that.
Awesome. And the second thing that I took from your conversation there was that you didn't align with what the FDA and the government was kind of pushing as the nutritional or dietary confinements or the pyramid for people. I came to America, I didn't realize that the acronym for the standard American diet is the SAD diet. And realizing that, I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Because if you look at people in the 1960s, they were eating a lot more high fats and different things, but they were able to do a lot more and their grip strength was higher, their VO2 max was higher, and for some reason it's just started to plummet. The obesity rate's gone up, the strength and lean muscle has gone down, and it's it's amazing to see the flip of what has actually happened to the dietary confinements in this part of the world.
Yeah, it it really is. And one of the things that's been interesting to me, even in the last couple of years, as I've been focusing more on my own business and even preparing some for this podcast, was I was looking at some of the research just to make sure, what I learned 6 years ago is still up to date.
Yes,
And the funny thing is, a lot of what I learned then is even more prevalent now, meaning
right.
like my program 9 years ago in nutrition was ahead of the time. They were looking at research that now
Wow.
is becoming more mainstream. And
Okay.
so I was really, I mean, things are coming out every day, but it is interesting this, kind of um, winding path that we've taken. And there are good reasons for it in some cases, like obviously Americans in general, but around the world, like we've become more of a convenience culture. We've had
Yep.
to work more and we eat more prepared meals and we eat out, and some of it is choice and some of
Mhm.
it is necessity. And so I think we're kind of coming back to where we were before, but maybe in a better way.
Indeed, indeed. Getting better supplementation, getting the right nutrients, and understanding what that nutrients are. Um,
Yeah.
which leads us into the next question, or the next sort of topic is, what are some of the biggest myths and misconceptions that you found about nutrition in your career?
Yeah, that is a great question. So one of the things I would say is like that it has to be complicated. Sometimes people, especially even I've worked in a functional medicine clinic for a while, and people came in and they're like, We did a lot of teaching, but people expect it to be hard, or that there's some, fancy key, or you've got to get a shot, or you've got to, do, we'll talk a bit maybe about fasting, but, you don't have to do any one particular thing to get to
Mhm.
good health. Let's
Yes.
just say. I mean, it's really ultimately basics.
Hmm.
If nothing else, it's like eat whole foods. Where did it come from, an animal or a plant? If not, don't eat it. Like
Right.
that's about all you need to know, really.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what you're saying in my understanding, it's simple, but it's not easy. Because a lot of people will look at it and they'll go, yeah, but I prefer to go and have that McDonald's burger, which is all processed food, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, eh, I think diets and fads and superfoods and all of these things, and you had asked me a bit about some of those. And I think, yes, thankfully, there are a lot of like diets I see as giving us I don't even like the word diet. It's like a way of eating, but we call them
Yes.
diets, right?
Yes.
But um, the there's always going to be a new one, sometimes based on research and what's coming out, and sometimes based on people wanting to make money and marketing a product, right? So
Right.
we have to kind of like look with a critical eye. Is this something that is based on research, or sort of ancestral health, or nature, or is it based on somebody marketing me a product that they're trying to sell?
Right.
So that's sort of one of my things that, when you think about myths and misconceptions, can you look with a critical eye at what is being sold or offered to you? And,
Mhm.
I have friends who have done some of these like fasting mimicking diets, but you're required to like buy a food product, and they're all packaged,
Okay.
and you eat them at a certain time each day, and like maybe it has good results in terms of weight loss
Hmm.
or maybe certain biomarkers in the body, but still you're eating a processed food. And what's in that
Precisely.
processed food? Is it all soy protein isolate? That's not a product I would want to feed to myself.
No,
So,
definitely not. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a very that's a very interesting way of looking at things because a lot of people won't look at it from that perspective. But questioning everything is what makes us or gives us the ability to understand whether it's going to actually be good for us or not, and based on what research, but also what results. I look at the results from the Hazda tribe in Africa, it's Tanzania, and then the Maasai. These guys eat predominantly what they hunt and forage. But if you look at the Hazda tribe's uh, gut biome, they're studying it all over the world because they say that the gut biome is so healthy, and these guys can run for days and days with no and sprinting at almost full out pace. They eat a lot of natural honey. And a lot of meat from that perspective. So it's all about what is going to be key to your understanding and to your body, but making sure that the food that you're eating is coming from a single source, not just being processed and processed and processed over and over and over again. Which leads
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. You made me think of a a Netflix movie that one of my friends had told me about. So it's pretty mainstream. It's called Hack Your Health: The
Okay.
Secrets of Your Gut.
Yeah.
But it's on Netflix, and it's excellent. So if anybody wants kind of a basic, easy to watch, it's very entertaining. They do like stool samples from the people, and monitor and look at, how their health is based on that. And so there's so much in gut health. I've done a lot of research and work in that area, which is constantly coming out and changing and evolving.
Yes.
And so, yeah, hack your health, the secrets of your gut. And they do talk. I mean, that's what's interesting around the world.
Okay.
There are these tribes, but sometimes it is like a genetic thing. I mean, people who were born in northern Russia might have, a different genetic predisposition to being able to eat certain foods that if you
Hmm.
were born in a tropical region in like Central America,
Yes.
you're predisposed to eating more, fruits grown on trees or different grains that grow in that area. And so, obviously, in this day and age, we're all moving around the globe at rapid speeds, but there is something to be said for um, there isn't like one size fits all. There's certain things that are good for everyone, but there
Hmm.
are also things that like is helpful to look into, whether you get lab testing done or you just kind of know your history and where you're from, like what kind of things work for you.
Precisely, precisely. It's a so I think Darwin said it the best. He said that it's not the fittest, the strongest, or the smartest that survives, but those who are most adaptable to change. And
Mhm.
you find that people from different areas will adapt to their surroundings. That's why from Africa, people are a lot darker skinned. It's because our melanin has developed to be able to absorb more of the light, so it doesn't bother us as much. And the same thing why we have curly hair, right? The curly hair actually allows for heat to dissipate. So
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different vantage points from being in specific areas that is attributed to us being adaptable, and which makes sense that the nutrition itself and our ability to be able to eat that nutrition or consume that nutrition and get the best value out of it will depend on which region of the world that you've come from.
Yeah, yeah. And the nice thing too is that none of this is like a stuck thing. I mean,
Yes.
regardless of whether you're overweight or underweight, or even, people who have conditions or autoimmune conditions, there's a
Hmm.
whole wide variety of things that can be like a circumstance in your life
Yes.
that you can overcome or learn to manage. And it's sort of, maybe we'll get into this a little bit more, but I remember from working with patients in the clinic where I worked that like, people would ask like, how much can I cheat or whatever on the diet? And, the answer is it depends on your body. Your
Yes.
body's going to let you know. And
Hmm.
some people can cheat a whole lot and it doesn't have a whole lot of impact. And other people, eating one trigger food can set off a cascade in the body that, takes them 6 weeks to recover from. So
Yes.
to me, it would not be worth eating a food that triggers a 6 week reaction in my body.
Exactly.
Whereas if it's like a 1 day thing and I, feel digestive upset for a day or something, I might be okay with that if I'm, doing it on vacation or whatnot. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep. I feel the same way. I feel the same way. So we can move over into thinking about what is your personal philosophy when it comes to nutrition? And do you prescribe to a specific diet or approach? What is, from your aspect, how do you view that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my personal philosophy is I eat mostly whole foods and as high quality as I can afford or is
Hmm.
available to me.
Okay.
I have tried pretty much every diet. I have not tried the carnivore diet. Other than that, like vegan, vegetarian, paleo, Mediterranean, DASH diet. I've tried all the diets, partly as part of my like learning for school and partly personally. So
Okay.
I don't I don't think any like one way is right or wrong.
Hmm.
Now I would say I follow mostly like a paleo or Mediterranean diet philosophy personally, just because I feel like that's what works best for me.
Perfect.
Um, but I think it's helpful to experiment for people, like you've kind of got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, 100%. I tried the vegetarian or vegan diet for a while, and I found some interesting results in loss of bloating, but I did find that my strength declined astronomically. And
Mm,
then I switched over from that to the carnivore diet now, and I feel phenomenal. And I found that my inflammation has gone down dramatically. So I have the ability to work out 6 days a week, and I'm working out really, really hard while gaining muscle and not actually feeling exceptionally sore every day. But that works for me. It
Wow.
doesn't mean that it's going to work for anybody else. There's different vantage points and different views because I come from South Africa, which means that we are used to eating copious amounts of meat and red meat there. And it's just the way that I grew up. So maybe that has influenced the way that I can process things. But also I only eat like twice a day versus people that
Mm.
will be bodybuilders who eat 6 or 7 times a day.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point too is like what are the other lifestyle things that you're doing?
Mhm.
Because if you're working out and regularly and hard like strength training or you're an endurance athlete, like it depends what you're doing.
Yes.
You need high quality and a lot of protein and fat
Mhm.
to sustain that, right? Whereas
Yes.
if you're just if you're aging or maybe you're young but you don't do a lot of fitness and you just walk regularly, like there's a lot of different nutrient needs, and that's where it really is customizable for each person. And so I think it's like not a one size fits all approach. um and yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned like you feel like your inflammation has gone down because you know especially in America, like red meat, saturated fat has been so vilified.
Hmm.
And it really was not until I went to nutrition school and then started sort of meeting more people in that functional medicine world that I got back into eating red meat and like grass fed red meat. And really, I mean, I remember the first time I ate it after not eating it in a few years, I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing.
Yeah.
And so, now I'm really on that bandwagon, but it's not about thinking about it. It's about
Hmm.
like what did my body tell me? What was the information that and I didn't know that because I was following what was sort of recommended and
Right.
not listening to my body. And so I think that's an important factor. I know it's sometimes hard for people to comprehend like how do I listen to my body?
Yeah.
But a lot of it is in how you feel physically, mentally. Do
Hmm.
you have energy? All of those things. So, yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, you've got to look at sort of what you're doing, what are your energy needs on a daily basis, and how can you fill that with the best possible, highest quality foods that, are available and that you can afford. Like I try not to be prohibitive in terms of, saying you need to eat all organic, grass fed, everything. Like,
Right.
sure, that would be great. I wish we could all do that. And sometimes it's not possible for everybody. So you can still get high quality food and feed yourself better or the best that you can.
Precisely. You also brought another point to it, right? Most people will try something for 2 weeks and then they'll stop after that. It takes about at least 2 to 3 months, from my perspective, before you actually start to see a change in the body, because your body now
Mm,
has to get rid of all the toxins or whatever it was that you were consuming before, and then start to adapt to this new way of life. But
yeah.
the timelines has been shortened. Oh, it must be within 30 days. 30 days or my money back. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of a marketing thing, right? Although I am shocked at what a person can do in like a month. I mean, I think how long? Maybe 6 to 8 weeks is sort of like a recommended if you're going to do like an elimination diet or
Mhm.
a detox of that sort. But I have seen major changes in people within 3 to 4 weeks if they really are strict,
Right.
and that's the part where it's like how strict or diligent are you willing to be?
Yes.
And being honest with yourself. Like if you're not, that's okay. So what can we do to add in things that will make you feel better even if you're still eating some of the junk or doing like the bad habits that you don't want to do? But at the same time, if you are much more like you do a full elimination diet or a detox or something like that, then sometimes you can see results in as quickly as, 2 to 4 weeks.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I'm pretty sure you've witnessed that in your lifetime, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I forget one of the stories I was reminded of was that when I worked in this functional medicine clinic, so we had every patient do an elimination diet, which is one of the things. I think I have some resources for you at the end, but the Institute for Functional Medicine is one of the main like licensing bodies in the US that I really like, functional medicine, and they have an elimination diet. And so we
Hmm.
had all of our patients go through this specific Institute for Functional Medicine elimination diet. And,
Yeah.
people would have serious sugar cravings and this tastes terrible. I don't like this. They didn't like anything. After like 3 to 4 weeks of removing it removes sugar, caffeine, the top like 6 allergens in the diet, lots of things, and I remember one of our patients coming in and talking about eating dried coconut chips, and they previously thought like dried coconut, gross, whatever, it's not even sweet, it tastes like just cardboard,
Yeah.
and after doing the diet for like 4 weeks, they were like, "Wow, this is so
Sweet.
sweet."
Yeah. Yeah.
So it changes, and even, that documentary I mentioned, the Hack Your Gut Health, is,
Yes.
they talk about how the microbiome changes and how quickly it can change.
Yep.
And so when you cut out sugar, which is a desired fuel source for our gut bacteria, it's not a
Hmm.
good one, but
Yes.
it is a desired one. So if you're feeding it sugar, it's going to want more and more sugar, which promotes
Right.
cravings.
Yes.
But if you cut the sugar out and it doesn't have access to that, then just the body's ability, when you taste that, it's like tastes so much more sweet because you're not eating the refined sugars, and it's much more satisfying as well.
Precisely, precisely. It's a battle of getting your body to understand what is a craving versus what is hunger as well.
Mm.
If you're hungry, you eat almost anything. But if you want something very specific, that means that it's just a craving. That's what I found when I was going through fasting. So I did a
Mm.
fast for 84 hours. I wanted to find out what my body was capable of. And this was me still working and working out. The only thing I was drinking was black coffee. I lost 10 pounds within those 3 days.
Wow.
But afterwards you get into this state of almost elatedness, like you're enlightened. Your body starts to operate in a completely different frequency. And I found that my mental health and clarity kind of almost skyrocketed based on that fact. So it does definitely help to remove the craving versus the hunger and understand what it is that you are actually needing, the body actually needs.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. It is sort of a working through. I love that you've done that. I think the longest I've gone on just water was like 60 to 70 hours I made it. So
Nice.
pretty yeah, and you're right. I mean, I was not I think I was on like a break from school or work at the time. So I
Okay.
was not, because you definitely are going to get brain fog, all the things that come with that, but that's
Yeah.
not so often what happens with people, at least from what I've seen, when they try fasting for the
Mhm.
first time or even just in general, um, they think that those cues are negative,
Yes.
right? Like, I have a headache, I feel exhausted, I've got like gut distress, whatever is going on in the body, inflammation, my joints are all hurting.
Mhm.
And so it's an important point. And when I've worked with people, I'm always educating them on like, here's the symptoms of detox, because you have to kind of
Yes.
get through some of those.
Yeah.
And if you do a full on fast, like you've done for a couple days, usually by the second day or the third day, it'll start to subside. You'll
Yes.
get these waves of like energy and joy, and then back into the detox, and then back into the elation. But if you never let it get that far, like you just feel a hunger pang or you get a headache and you think, oh, I better eat, then you're not ever allowing your body to get to that like deeper phase of healing.
Yeah. And at that stage, I think it's at the 72-hour mark, your body actually starts to cannibalize the unhealthy cells in your in your nervous system, in your system itself. So you start to get rid of all the stuff that's actually bad. And if you do sprinting during this, or you boost your growth hormone, that will revitalize the body completely. My viewpoint on this though as well is that a lot of people don't realize that the gut itself is an actual nervous system. It
Hmm.
it's it's telling you, like, when someone says you have a gut feeling, that's a nervous system that's giving you information. It's giving you feedback on things.
Totally. Yes, 100%. It's so funny that you brought that up, because I was looking through some yeah, like the gut brain, and I had taken this class several years ago about nutrition and mental health, and I think that was one of the questions you had asked me. And
Yeah.
so the enteric nervous system, that's what it's called, is this extensive lining of neurons that are lining our gut, which is
Hmm.
dubbed the second brain.
Yes.
And I'm going to just read the statistics so I don't misquote it, but it was up to 95% of the body's serotonin, which we know serotonin is a neurotransmitter. This is responsible for feelings of well being and mood, and all of that is
Mhm.
found in that enteric nervous system, which is our gut.
Wow.
So, a lot of times when people are eating processed food, um, it's affecting the gut, and the gut isn't as readily able to produce the neurotransmitters. So many of our neurotransmitters are produced in the gut.
Yeah.
And if we're not eating the right foods to fuel that, we can't make them. And so no matter what you do, or even if you're taking, I mean, again, I don't want to give any advice, and people are on medications for a variety of reasons. So
Hmm.
if you're taking something, that is fine, but like, we're often treating the symptom and
Yes.
not the cause,
Pause.
right? And
Hmm.
so that's why I appreciate functional medicine so much, is that they're really looking at root causes and what's
Yes.
underlying, not just treating symptoms.
Yes.
So if you're taking like an antidepressant or something, how your body is still maybe not able to make the neurotransmitters it needs if you're still eating a junk diet.
Precisely. Precisely. And a lot of doctors won't look at that. They just look at treat, like you said, treating the symptom instead of the cause of the problem. And I find that alcohol tends to be one of the worst things for your system. Because if you think about it, what does alcohol do? It kills germs, it kills bacteria. When you're drinking that, it goes into your intestine, into your gut, it's killing all that natural good bacteria. And now you're at a disadvantage. And it is a serotonin inhibitor. It's a
Yeah.
downer, right?
Yes, absolutely. Alcohol is one of the things, and I mean, I'm like guilty of drinking alcohol, and probably too much at times. Even still, it's definitely something I've reduced a lot in my life. But
Mhm.
it is one of those things that in our culture in general is very, just, it's like this magic button for calming and fun and socializing, and every, like, social lubricant, right?
Yes.
But you're right. Every single thing I look up in terms of whether it's a detox or elimination diet or the gut, alcohol and often caffeine, that one's more debatable, but they're both
Yeah.
things that, like, it's good to give your body a break
Break
from,
from. Hmm.
no
Yes.
matter what. Even if you want to drink a lot, or you drink caffeine every day, or you really enjoy those things, like, you have to take a break, because like you said, they're not natural substance. Caffeine is more natural than alcohol, but they're not things that our body wants, or there's no nutrient requirement, let's say,
Yes.
for alcohol or caffeine.
Precisely, precisely. I'm really glad that you brought that up, or that you went to that point. Because I used to play rugby for a drinking club that had a rugby problem. So, so, so trust me, I've had my fair share of drinking.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
but but from that point, like I'll do it maybe once or twice a month, depending on where I'm at, and I'll let myself have that time to not, I wouldn't say it's a good time, but just time to let loose, right? That's the point of it. But I don't use it as an everyday occurrence for me. It's just once in a blue moon. And that's kind of helped me to be able to be a lot more productive, because when you drink, for me now, and at 36 years old, you don't just lose one day, you lose 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And taking anything out of your diet or out of your routine, it's like you don't really know. I have a lot of friends, right, who do drinking or even like recreational drugs or whatever on a
Mhm.
on a semi-regular basis. And they're like, "Oh, I feel fine." But you ask the question, like, have you ever tried taking it out
Right.
for say at least 2
8 weeks.
weeks to a
Oh,
month, like a
okay.
month minimum, and then see how you feel, and then
Yeah.
add it back in slowly,
Hmm.
and see how different it is. I mean, one,
Yes.
it can make things like more fun sometimes, but other times you might go, I don't even want to add this back. Like, I felt
Right.
better without it.
Hmm.
And like you said, letting loose in whatever way that you want to, whether that's like eating a bunch of junk food or drinking, or caffeine or whatever, you are experimenting with, but it's not oftentimes, like you said, you start to feel worse
Yeah.
than you did in the first place. Yeah. And
Mhm.
now, I mean, I'm in my 40s and I'm like, I'm not when I drink, I don't feel terrible, but I don't
Yeah.
feel great. And
Right.
it's not worth
Yep.
the negative effects anymore. And
Yes.
same with a lot of the garbage foods. Like I don't want to eat a birthday cake or ice cream. Like they don't work for me.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So
I feel you on that one. So going back into and exploring a little bit deeper in the nutrition and how nutrition is tied to mental health. We kind of spoke
yeah.
a little bit about that. From your vantage point and your aspect, how closely is it actually tied?
Yeah, I mean, very closely. Like I said, I took an entire class that was like 3 weekends of an intensive, and this was, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think,
Mhm.
and it was all on nutrition and mental health. So, wouldn't say I'm an expert in that area, so I'm not
Yep.
gonna go too deep, but there's definitely a link,
Hmm.
and not just a link, but like we talked about, the gut-brain axis and the fact that the majority of neurotransmitters that our body creates
Hmm.
for the brain are actually made in the gut, and
Okay.
that is based upon what what food that we're like feeding the gut bacteria.
Okay.
So something, for example, like a um, fermented food, say,
Hmm.
would be a pro for positive like neurotransmitter creation,
So like
whereas
kombucha? So
yeah, yeah,
okay.
fermented foods would be like kombucha, yogurt could be a fermented food,
Okay.
kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, any of those kind of things. And
Okay.
the interesting thing about fermented foods is that they contain the probiotics. So with the fermentation process, it's going to be that the bacteria actually eat like carbohydrates and sugar. So
Hmm.
typically you're going to find that they're foods that would be high in sugar or carbs, but the bacteria is breaking them down. And so
Okay.
it's leaving behind more of the proteins and fats, and the carbohydrates themselves are more like digestible in that way.
Awesome.
So, but sometimes the one caveat I will say is sometimes fermented foods can be problematic in people that have gut dysbiosis, which most of us do. And by gut dysbiosis, I just mean like not
Balance.
a positive or balanced makeup in your gut,
Okay.
right? So if you are eating a lot of the offending factors or drinking alcohol, eating processed foods, even stress and sleep, those things can high
Okay.
amounts of stress, not getting great sleep, those things can sort of negatively impact our um, gut bacteria as well.
Okay. Do you think the stress and the not sleeping well is actually because it's boosting your cortisol level and that cortisol level's going into the gut and affecting it from that perspective?
Um, that's a good question. There's definitely um, cortisol is impacted directly by stress, right? Our body secretes cortisol in stressful times.
Hmm.
So I don't know that it's a direct impact in terms of what's happening in the gut. Um, but overall, for sure, it can lead to like cortisol is going to affect our sleep.
Yeah.
Cortisol is that hormone, right? You think of, and when your body, like back in the ancestral days, you need to run away from a lion or a bear.
Yep.
There's cortisol and adrenaline in the body so that you can stay alive and stay awake and keep moving, right?
Precisely. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so you don't want to go to sleep in that situation. So when cortisol is high, and yet cortisol is something that we do need in times to motivate us.
Hmm.
So, it can be positive. Sometimes if you I've listened to a lot of doctors talk about like caffeine and coffee and different forms of caffeine. And if you do like caffeine, it can be one of those things that's like good to drink maybe mid morning or something like that, just because that's time in the day at which if your cortisol goes up, it'll have enough time to slowly like curve down throughout the day. Whereas
Okay.
a lot of people, you probably know, like are still drinking coffee at 4 in the afternoon to get through those last like 2 hours of work or whatever they have to do.
Yes.
And that can continue to cause like a cortisol spike later into the evening, right? It's not an
Mm,
immediate, even though maybe the caffeine has an immediate effect in our body. I think the half life, I don't remember, I don't want to misspeak, but like the half life is pretty long, meaning it takes a long time for that to get cleared from the system. And so, um, things that increase our cortisol, we don't always have control over that. Like,
yeah.
you're driving in your car and you almost get in an accident, or somebody calls you and screams at you at work, or whatever is happening. Those things can increase cortisol without us. We have no real control over that. So,
Okay.
you can't always avoid it, but if you can, in terms of like drinking caffeine or creating stress in your own world, it's helpful
Yeah.
to manage. Yeah.
Mitigation strategies for stress I found that are very, very useful are meditation, counted to 10, because what that does is it kind of centers you for the day. It gives you a bit of an anchor that allows this bulletproof vest to kind of go over you. And then the second thing is breath work, which was Wim Hof. I love him. It's called parasympathetic breath work, which kind of
Mhm.
down regulates your central nervous system, and then getting into cold plunges. Cold plunges are automatically what that does. It teaches your body how to start to cope when the external factors are stressful, because
Mm.
sitting in a 37-degree temperature water, getting that over your body for 3 minutes, you have to literally control your mind to take over your body. Because the natural inclination is, I want to get out of this now.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard. It's hard. Like overcoming adversity in life in any way, and that's like a uh what is the word? Like self-created adversity, but anytime you can overcome adversity in a positive way, whether that's like stress from an emotional situation in your life or literal physical challenges like a disease or an illness or something with a family member,
Mhm.
it helps you build resilience, right? And
Yes.
I love what you said about the breathing exercises. I mean, I do a lot of breathing exercises, and even it doesn't even have to be anything formal. I mean, close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths and go
Mhm.
from whatever conversation or situation you were just in. Close your eyes, do 3 deep breaths, and then go back to it. You're going to feel different no matter
Right.
what. So
Right.
I agree with you. Like, you've got to have we all have to have this like toolkit. I like to help clients really create like a toolkit, because
Yes.
not all of your tools are going to be useful in every situation.
Precisely.
But taking like somewhere between 1 and 10 deep breaths, you can do that anytime, anywhere in life. And
Yes.
that's something no one can take away from you, unless you're holding your breath, but still like
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. If all you have is a hammer, the entire world's going to look like a nail. But once you start to add some different things like a screwdriver, a jigsaw, whatever it is, you add these different tools, like you said, now you have the capability to choose how you show up in any given situation.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's so helpful, and learning like, you've got to take a couple classes or Google it. These days like we've got so many different tools at our fingertips, right? From
Mhm.
podcasts to books to any sort of AI generated thing. Like you can watch movies, whatever you want, but like figure out some tools, have some things in your kit, and use them when you need to.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Going into the physical side, so obviously we do mental and physical at Excalibur.
Yeah.
Physical strength, how closely is that tied to your nutrition, and how can we ensure that people can regain some of that strength that they've lost by making changes in the nutrition?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, food is the fuel that we give our body, right?
Hmm.
Literally. Other than like sunlight and air, food is, or something in the form of a liquid, is nutrition and fuel. And how does our body turn that into something we can use? And I think especially if so many of your clients and your audience are doing like very physical demanding workouts
Mhm.
or maybe even in their jobs. And it is really important to ensure that you have the right nutritional makeup in that case. We talked about obviously, fasting. That's not in general going to break the body down. But sometimes if people are doing really intense workouts, you might not want to do fasting like that.
Right.
Like it can be different in each situation. And I think it's super important that we make sure we're getting the right makeup. Like proteins are so important, and I,
Yes.
I think a lot of times people will ask, like, are vegetarian or vegan proteins okay for rebuilding muscle mass or building muscle mass after a workout?
Hmm.
There's a lot of debate about that. My personal opinion, and this is an opinion, but somewhat research based, is that it's not as easy for the body to assimilate vegetable proteins into building muscle because they're not complete proteins, which means they don't have all of the amino acid makeup in them where animal proteins do.
Okay.
So, but you can do it. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say you can't. And even in my nutrition school, I went to school with, there were not a lot of men in the program, but there were like 4 or 5. And one of them is an elite. He's an ultra runner and he's a vegan and he
Okay.
like stands by that. So you can do it. I don't want to tell anybody you can't.
Huh. Yeah.
But it is definitely easier with animal proteins on a basis. Um, have been a huge adopter of bone broth protein, like as a
Mm.
protein powder.
Yeah.
Came into that when I was working at the functional medicine clinic, and it's very digestible. It's very gut healing, um, because it's in like a protein powder or a bone broth form. It doesn't require as much from your digestive system as breaking down, like eating a you know hamburger patty or a
A
chicken
steak.
breast or something
Yeah.
like that, a steak, exactly. So I really like personally bone broth protein powders, but you can do it in any way. I think it's more like if I was making a recommendation, I would typically recommend somebody do like a bone broth protein powder. But if they're not open to that, then let's see, what you're open to, that what options we have.
Okay. Yeah. What I
Yeah.
did find with when you mentioned the what's it called, the vegan-based protein,
Mm.
plant-based protein, I found that soy protein tends to boost your estrogen level when you consume
Mm.
it, which which is adversely affecting your ability to grow muscle because you need a certain amount of testosterone to stimulate that muscle growth as well as to kind of get you motivated, right? Estrogen in males, estrogen, if the level is off, it kind of makes you demotivated. It makes you not want to push and challenge yourself. Whereas red meat, on the other hand, tends to have creatine and also has everything else that actually helps you boost the testosterone level to be able to push
Yeah.
beyond that.
Definitely, I would say not all vegan or vegetarian proteins are made equal, for
Yeah.
sure. I
Mhm.
am not a fan of the soy proteins, and one thing I will say is if people want to use soy protein, like, please try to make sure, if at all possible, that it's organic, because soy is one of the top genetically modified foods in the US.
Mhm.
And because of that, it's also highly sprayed with pesticides. And so all of the organic ones at least are not going to be able to be genetically modified or pesticide sprayed. So you're getting a higher quality product. Um, as far as like vegan or vegetarian proteins, some of the ones I like, there's, some that are like a rice are okay depending on how your body does with that. I like seaweed based or marine algae based, those kind
Okay.
of, they're harder to find, but seaweed is one of the few like sources, or algae type proteins are one of the few things that has a lot of the nutrients that
Hmm.
other non-animal products don't have. Um, so that can be helpful as far as like looking for protein powders. And yeah, if people have
Awesome.
questions about that as a follow-up or something, I'm happy to follow up with more information on that because there's so many out there. I mean, it's
Yes.
really hard to find and look for a protein powder that you like, not only the taste,
Yeah,
but let alone like the taste, but also like what it's doing for your body.
definitely. It's like death by choice at the moment over here.
I know. Well, there's so many, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, this one wasn't good enough, so we've got 10 more options for you."
Okay, so say somebody is looking at starting today to change their nutrition. What what good habits can they start to build, and how can they make progress on creating a not diet, because we don't like the word diet, but rather a lifestyle choice that is going to benefit them in the long run?
Yeah. Um, Sort of my number one recommendation across the board, I don't care what diet you follow or who you are or where you're from, is get sugar out of your diet.
Okay.
Completely. Period. Unless it's in a natural form. If it's in a fruit or it's like naturally occurring in a grain or something that you're eating, fine. But like
Mhm.
if you, I think you and I talked a little bit about like label reading. So I always would tell
Yes.
clients, flip the product around. Don't read anything on the front of the label because it's all marketing. None of that
Yeah.
is regulated. The only thing regulated are the nutrition facts. And look at the grams of sugar and see how many grams of sugar. If it's more than 5 grams of sugar per serving, probably don't get it. Unless it's a sweet treat, then maybe like up to 10 is okay as like an occasional treat. But
Mhm.
if it's a product that you're regularly consuming, it should be like 0 to 5 grams of sugar per serving. And then look at the ingredients and see what it is. Is it a natural? Is it like regular sugar or is it some, you know, hydrogenated, which is becoming less and less common? Or is it like brown rice syrup or sugar or something that has been really highly processed? Um, because I would always tell people like sugar is the one thing if you look ancestrally, right? Like where was sugar? It's in fruit, it's in places and situations that are hard to come by on a
Yeah.
regular basis,
Hmm.
right? Honey, you're not breaking
Yeah.
into a beehive unless you're a beekeeper.
Yes.
Maple syrup, it's coming out of a tree. Fruits, they only ripen like once a year. So these
Yeah.
are things that ancestrally and even like 50 to 100 years ago, right before mass production of food products, we didn't have access to.
Hmm.
So you really had to try or have some like fancy, equipment at home to be able to get or make those things. And they were in small doses for a certain period of the year where we were like trying to pack on pounds so that we didn't eat through the winter.
Right.
Now it's in everything and it is addictive. It feeds those unhealthy gut bacteria.
Yeah.
So honestly, if nothing else, I mean, even if you want to keep, well, alcohol does have quite a bit of sugar in it, most of it,
Yes.
not all, but even if you want to keep the alcohol and caffeine, I'm like very anti-sugar. So
Okay.
my that's
That's
my soapbox on that one.
that's great for me because I'm the same way. It when I found out that Coca-Cola doesn't only have that much sugar in it, it also has that much sodium. It was a clear indication to me that this is bad for you, right? The amount of sodium that they put in there is astronomical, and the reason why is if you eat a lot of salt, what do? You become more thirsty, so you drink
Mm,
more Coke. And
yes.
I'm not. It to me it just it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense because you have companies that are out there to make money, but not looking to for the longevity of their people, which is not good in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean most food manufacturers are not all, but
Mhm.
most are looking to sell a product. They're
Right.
not looking to like improve our health. Some
Yes.
are this day and age because things are changing, but like most of them are looking to sell a product, not improve your health. And so
Mm.
remember that, did it come from, and if it is in a package, did it come from a whole food? Like, I'm also realistic in terms of like modern society and convenience and the fact that people have jobs and families and a lot of things to do. So you're not going to grow and tend to and cook all of your own food and meals. Like that's
Yes.
pretty unrealistic at this
Yeah.
point, right? And not everything out of a package is bad. You do have to, even myself, I was recently, I forget, I was like in a quick grocery store thing and I grabbed something off the shelf and I got home and I'm like, this has 12 grams of sugar per serving, but it wasn't, I don't even remember what it was. It wasn't something that should have had that. And I thought,
Right.
oh, I was in a rush. It looked good. The marketing on the front of the package was great. And I bought it. And I was like,
Right.
oh, what an So we can all fall for, the marketing, but just remember they don't have your best interest in mind. They're trying to sell a product. And
100%.
so read the nutrition facts, read the ingredients. If you can't recognize what's there and it's got a lot of sugar, then just bypass it and get something else.
Perfect. Perfect. In coming to closing, if you could give our listeners one piece of advice, nutritional advice, what do you think that would be?
Let's see. Well, I already said the sugar thing. That was
Hmm.
what I was going to say. Hmm. I think trying to experiment would be my advice,
Okay.
because we've talked a lot about this, but like what works best for one person doesn't work for everyone.
Hmm.
And it's not, I guess it's not the easiest thing. I've done this course last year in mindful eating, and
Okay.
mindful eating is different. It goes against, honestly, a lot of the advice I talked about today, because it's not about advice. It's about like listening and paying attention in the present moment to what you're eating
Okay.
and what's in front of you and the experience that you're having. and
Mm,
and that's hard for a lot of people, right?
yeah.
But you said you meditate and you're doing these like breathing exercises and cold plunges and things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, surprisingly, mindful eating makes people quite uncomfortable.
Interesting.
And one of the things that I would often recommend for my clients is like try to take one mindful bite, because a lot of people don't think they have time to do a whole meal of mindful eating because maybe it takes 45 minutes instead of 10, right?
Okay.
But can you take like one mindful bite or one mindful sip before you just chug it down or finish your meal or whatever, to
Mm,
really, because your body gives you a lot of information from, whether it's there was a study I saw years ago that it was something that was like genetically modified and it had a lot of pesticides, and the research showed that there were the lining of the gut. So I talk to people a lot about leaky gut, which just are like these gaps between cells in our gut that allow things to pass through that should not, from our small intestine into our body.
okay.
And the study had showed that it wasn't when it went all the way into the small intestine that this occurred. The food that they ate in their mouth, as soon as they put it in their mouth, these gaps in the small intestine opened up.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that
Okay.
wild? Yeah, meaning that, like, the body already knew just upon taste
Hmm.
that this was not something that it wanted and was gonna, like, cause these junctions in the gut to kind of get wider. And so, there's something in that, like, we often just eat so quickly that it, like, tastes good on the nose, or it's like this,
Mm,
that sugar high, and then 10 minutes later, we feel terrible. So,
yes.
how can you kinda slow down and just sometimes with one mindful bite, you'll go, "Ugh," like, I'll eat, like, a potato chip or something, which I used to love potato chips. It was one of my,
Yeah.
like, junk food binge things, and I'm like, "It's not even good."
Yeah. Tastes like cardboard.
But you have to, like, pay attention enough
Yeah.
to get there, right? It's not just, like, knowing it's not good or reading an article or having me or you tell somebody it's not good for them.
Yeah.
They have to feel it in their own body, and so, I guess that mindfulness is sort of me just bringing in that, like, how can you pay attention to your body a little bit more than just, like, listening to all the rules and advice and ideas from experts in the field. So, yeah, cut
Beautiful.
out sugar and take a mindful bite. Those are my two like takeaway tips.
That is beautiful. It's bringing awareness to what you're putting into your body, right? What's nourishing you. You wouldn't take a can of sugar and put it into your car, would you? Is the gas
No.
tank of your car. So we do that to something. You wouldn't do that to something that's $30,000 or $40,000 or worth that amount. But what is your body worth to you, right? That's what people
Yeah.
gotta understand. The things that we get for free, often or not, we don't take full advantage on it. We don't show it the value that it should be shown.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, thank you so much. We really do appreciate this. Where can our viewers find you?
Yeah, great question. So my company is, you can see here, Whole Body Recharge. I am in the process of rebooting the website. I had a business last year that I kind of let sunset, and this is the new one. So Whole
Beautiful.
Body Recharge, the website should be up this week.
Awesome.
So be happy to find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me that way. I have a lot of my professional contacts out there. So if people want to find me there, I'm under Elizabeth Lennon on LinkedIn. And yeah, Whole Body Recharge. So I look forward to connecting with some of your people and working more with you going forward, Kyle. Excited.
Perfect. Perfect, Beth. Yeah, and you'll be able to find some of Beth's content in our actual application coming up pretty soon as well. We're doing this alliance. And then when you guys want to be able to reach out to her, as long as you're in the Excalibur program and app, you'll be able to have access to Beth. On top of that, you get special rates. But if you want to go direct as well. We want to make sure that Beth
Awesome.
is kept busy. We want to make sure that people are actually upskilling in their lives because at the end of the day, your nutrition is the foundation to having a healthy body as well as a healthy mindset. So you guys know where to find us. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. You can find us on Excalibur Coaching on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, as well as on LinkedIn and anywhere else that you find your podcast needs. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you so much, Beth.
Bye. Thanks, Kyle.